And welcome, Hoosier Nation, to our 139th episode of the Hoosier Sound, where we are the official podcast of Indiana HQ. Our mission and goal is simple. We want to bring in-depth analysis and coverage to Indiana University sports to as many fans as possible across a multitude of modern platforms. We're recording this edition of the Hoosier Sound on April 28th, 2020, where I am your host, Matthew Lukens, and here with me tonight is Indiana HQ contributor, Nathan Christian. If you would like to subscribe to our podcast, which please do, for free, all you have to do is search for the Hoosier Sound wherever you listen to podcasts, and then you can stay up to date with all of our information following us on Twitter at the Hoosier Sound, as well as our partner at Indiana HQ. Head on over to our website, indianahq.com. That's indianahq.com for everything in one quick, easy place. All right, Hoosier Nation. It's time for some sports talk. So I know it was earlier this week. We had the podcast on Tuesday. I think this news came out on Wednesday or Thursday. Yeah, it was Thursday of last week that Demezy Anderson was transferring. I know Indiana HQ is one of the first websites to publish something on Thursday on Twitter stating that there was going to be big news coming out. And then Demezy announced later that day that he was going to be transferring. So, Nathan, opening thoughts on Demezy leaving and leaving opening an open scholarship for us for next year.
Yeah, we'll get into that here in just a minute. It's 2 scholarships now that are open. It's really interesting, but you know, it's crazy, right? I mean, this is a guy who coming into 2018 was a 4-star recruit, and it just never worked out for Demezy Anderson. Archie Miller gave him a shot, didn't he? I mean, it wasn't like Demezy didn't have enough opportunity to play and to get some impact minutes in some big games, but it just never worked out for him. You know, he's an in-state kid. You wanted to root for him. There was nothing really that he did to upset Hoosier fans. It just, for whatever reason, maybe the system was a little bit too complex to digest or what. I'm not sure what the issue was, but Demezy decided that it was best for him to leave the IU basketball program. It was a mutual decision. On the post that he sent out on Instagram, he cited that he talked to his family. And, you know, at the end of the day, Matt, like, you know, I think we all wanted Demezy Anderson to succeed at IU. And there's no question about it. What do you think went wrong for him, or if anything? I mean, was it just one of those cases where he was the 12th best player on the team or whatever it was, or do you think there was something that happened?
I'm not going to speculate. I'd be, you know, remiss if I did mention the fact that we recruited people at the same position as him, and even in the same class. I mean, Jerome Hunter plays the small forward position / the 3 or the 4, and that's Demezy's position, right? Like, so, you know, he just got over recruited, right? Like, basketball players, in my opinion, especially when you're looking at the scholarship and how you build a program, are a lot like Legos. You got to put them one on top of each other, but you got to put them evenly, right? You can't just have 5 point guards on a roster, then the Lego will fall over because you don't have any small forwards or power forwards. You got to keep them even. You got to make a brick wall on your scholarships, and that goes for classes and it goes for positions. We have too many forwards, and I think Demezy was a byproduct. Him transferring was a byproduct of the fact that we have too many forwards, which is a luxury that we didn't have a couple of years ago under Tom Crean. So it has come full circle where it's like we have too many guards, now we have too many forwards.
So life is like a box of chocolates, right, man?
Right,
and
yes.
except this is the basketball version, which is college basketball programs are like a box of Legos.
Yes,
a set of Legos, maybe.
Like a set of Legos. Yes, exactly. I mean, another thing about Demezy, though, I wanted to talk about, and something that I don't think many people brought up earlier this week, so it's a little bit of a new view, is that I think his game, especially when you looked at how he played in high school, was he needed a lot of shots. He needed to be the shot taker, the shot caller of the team, right? He needed to be the guy that you're running screens for, setting up for, the guy that the other team was looking for. And IU, I mean, he just wasn't good enough to be the guy on the team. When he transfers, I'm sure he'll have the talent to be the guy somewhere else. And I think that a program like another in-state program like Valpo or at that level, right, like a mid-major, but a solid mid-major, would love to have a player of Demezy's caliber on their team.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy who, for whatever reason, I mean, he ended up averaging 2.1 points per game at IU, 1.6 rebounds, 0.6 assists. For what it's worth, it may be tough for Hoosier fans to even recall this, but he averaged 12 minutes a game last year. It's just they were kind of front-loaded in the beginning part of the season. Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said. And to me, you talk about Valpo. They just lost one of their high scorers, Javon Freeman Liberty, to the transfer portal. I don't know if maybe he's somebody that Indiana would be interested in. I'm not going to speculate on that, but yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said. I dug a little bit deeper into this. Okay.
Yeah.
And who would have thought that at the start of last season, we would say this on April 28th, 2020. All right. You ready for this? In their Indiana career, Evan Fitzner outscored Demezy Anderson by 19 points.
I don't know what I was doing today, but I was role playing in my head that was a draft, like a draft agent, and that I was like advocating for Romeo Langford again because I'm bored. I have nothing else to do in my house, and there's no sports, so I'm going insane here. But one of my points I brought up was we brought in a stretch forward that was supposed to be one of the shooters to surround Romeo with, and he ended up going through like a 20-game slump where he couldn't hit a three-pointer. That was Evan Fitzner. So little did I know going to this podcast tonight that I was going to hear his name again. But thank you, Nifton. Thank you so much for bringing that up.
How crazy is that, man? Like Evan Fitzner scored. Oh my gosh, I was wrong. He actually scored 27 more points than Demezy Anderson did. I thought it took 101. Fitzner ended up scoring 107 109 in his IU season, whereas Demezy only dropped 82 points over 2 years. And look, what does this do now? It opens up 2 scholarship spots. Yep. And really before this Demezy Anderson news broke, and like you said, Matt, Indiana HQ was pretty much ahead of everyone when it comes to letting people know that there was some big news coming up on Thursday.
For real.
It was pretty exciting. Not gonna lie. It would have been kind of embarrassing though if like nothing happened, right?
That would have been we would have had a couple people retweet, be like, "Look at these schmucks! Look at what they did! They got us all excited. I was refreshing Twitter for 3 hours, and you nothing happened." Yeah, that would have been what happened.
Yeah, although they could probably still be watching this YouTube stream and say, "Look at these 2 schmucks! Like nothing's really changed."
I mean, I have schmuck written across my forehead. I just know this is. Anyways,
man.
Besides the point, so we have an extra scholarship. We have 2 actually, but one is being saved for Christian Lander. I think that's pretty much everybody understands that at this point. However, like you mentioned, the Valpo guard that was transferring earlier this week. Do you see us using the extra scholarship for a grad transfer? Or do you see us pocketing it?
Man, I know there's one thing. It's like one thing to say what you think will happen, and then it's another to say what you want to happen. I want Indiana to go out and add a grad transfer. I mean, it doesn't really matter. And I know there are numbers out there that say, hey, for kids that transfer from a mid-major to a Power 5, high major school, it just doesn't work out as much. We talk about Evan Fitzner. He a good example of that. But I still go back and I think about guys like Max Bielfeldt and Nick Zeisloft, who going into their respective Indiana careers, they weren't expected to be superstar players. They weren't even expected to be impact role players. I think Bielfeldt, when he was at Michigan, was like a sort of an end of the bench type of player.
Right.
Except, guess what? Both of those players were so vital in Indiana's Big Ten championships in both, in that 2015 season, 15-16 season. I don't see why that can't be any different here. I'm not saying you got to go out and get a former 5-star recruit or go out and get some guy who played at Arizona or Kentucky or Kansas or whatever. I would, if I was running Indiana's basketball program, I would scour the transfer portal and I would look for preferably a big who could come in and maybe stretch the floor. And if he can't stretch the floor, at least help with the physicality of the game with rebounding and with scoring inside, hopefully making a few free throws. Because looking ahead to next year, and I would recommend everyone go to indianahq.com/scholarships, because that clearly lays out each year what to expect. Next year in the post, Indiana's got a little bit of a tight situation because Deron Davis graduated. Joey Brunk's going to be your starter more likely than not. I don't look at Trayce Jackson-Davis and Race Thompson as sort of prototypical post fives. Okay, if you even want to include Trayce Jackson-Davis in that, I can agree. But if you're talking about your two posts being Joey Brunk and Trayce Jackson-Davis, after that, there is nobody. No. And that is pretty frightening, alarming. If you are a team that's going to go into next year playing in the Big Ten, it's a physical conference. Lots of fouls are called. You can't go into next year with basically running a pretty risky strategy of having just those two players up front. Foul trouble happens, injuries happen, suspensions happen. Who knows what can happen? I would go out and try to add a grad transfer. Now, Indiana could pocket it, which Archie Miller has done previously. Indiana could try to add a high school senior and try to, develop that kid over time. But with Christian Lander likely reclassifying, my vote would be go out and try to fight a grad transfer. One of the guys I wanted was Marcus Santos Silva out of VCU. He was a really solid player for VCU last year, but unfortunately, it looks like he's trimmed his list down to like 4 or 5 finalists, none of which include Indiana. So, some type of player like that. That's what I would do. I'm going to flip the question right back at you. You have 3 choices. Would you add a grad transfer? Would you add a high school senior? Or would you pocket it and try to develop, another high school recruiting class in 21, 22, so on?
Honestly, I think I would pocket it. I get the whole depth argument, and honestly, I would not be opposed to adding a big. Again, you look at it. We're 1 injury away from. I don't like talking about injuries, but we're 1 injury away from seeing the death lineup with Justin Smith at the 5. Like, that's how close. And I don't even want to think about that. But imagine Justin Smith playing the 5. Like, we're really that close where he's gonna have to fill in minutes there because you can't have Trayce and Race doing that the whole game. It's just impossible. So you'd have probably Justin Smith do that, or Jordan Geronimo, or whoever is tall enough to do that. But look, honestly, the scholarships work out where you bring in Christian Lander next year, and it's kind of a freshman heavy team. You have 4 freshmen of the 12 scholarships that you have. Like it's a third, I think, by doing the quick math in my head. And that you should save that for another class so you can even out the scholarships instead of giving it to another freshman. If you bring in a grad transfer, that's fine, but I honestly think the coaches and the coaching staff are going to pocket it at this point, unless it's like a home run grad transfer, like somebody that was commenting on Trayce Jackson-Davis' post, like Jeremiah Francis from UNC, somebody who can bring in point guard skills, maybe sit out a year. So he's a freshman the year after, get healthy. Jeremiah's been needing to get healthy, but was a high-level recruit in high school. That's somebody that we could look at. Just tossing names out there, but honestly, just keep the scholarship in pocket and or get a guy that sits out a year.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned Jeremiah Francis. We just posted an article over on Indiana HQ where we said, hey, COVID-19, it's thrown this transfer rule deliberation by the NCAA into complete disarray. I mean, they were trying to have a decision earlier in the spring about, hey, do we make all transfers immediately eligible instead of forcing them to sit out a year as long as it's just 1 transfer? They still have to decide that. I mean, coronavirus has affected all sorts of different aspects of the game. But, now that Demezy Anderson has moved on, and I'm curious, you talked about Valpo. I'm curious to see where he ends up. I'm genuinely interested. But, now that Demezy has moved on, who are the guys next year that you expect to get into, to carve into that 12-minute per game opening that Demezy Anderson's departure has created? Do you see Archie just relying more on guys like Al Durham and Rob Finney and Jerome Hunter, or do you think there's something maybe out of the box that could happen?
No, I honestly think you hit it on the nail on the head there. I think it's going to be a little bit of Al Durham, and I think it's going to be a lot of Jerome Hunter because as you saw Demezy Anderson's minutes decline, you saw Jerome Hunter's minutes increase. And I think Jerome coming back, being healthy, and the player that he can become is eventually what forced Demezy's hand to transfer in the first place. So I do think those minutes will be going to Jerome Hunter, Justin Smith. I could see even a little bit of Anthony Leal jumping in there very quickly, but I think those minutes are going to be distributed mostly to Jerome Hunter.
Yeah, and you talk about some of the more veteran players. I liked what you said right at the end there. I think Anthony Leal is going to be someone who's going to step right into what we wanted out of Demezy Anderson.
Yeah.
I mean, look, you almost look at the recruiting profiles of both players, and it's like a carbon copy. It's quite remarkable. I mean, Demezy Anderson is sort of a fringe 3-4-star player, getting some high major offers and committed to Indiana. And a lot of people were saying, hey, this kid can knock down a three-pointer. Both players are from the state of Indiana. I mean, it's kind of crazy how similar the profiles are for both players. And when I look at Leal, I see somebody who, it's going to be a little bit of pressure on his shoulders. But if we're talking about stepping in, 15, 18 minutes a game, hitting down a big shot here and there, grabbing a couple rebounds, I think that's what I'm thinking about as far as next year goes. Yeah. And I know Jordan Geronimo is going to come in, and I know Trey Galloway is going to come in, and we'll see how the freshmen play themselves, as far as playing time next year. But I'm thinking Anthony Leal. I don't know if that offends anyone, but I'm thinking Anthony Leal. I'm feeling him a little bit.
And I do think it's a little bit of a weird comment to compare Demezy and Anthony Leal, and we can debate this, Nathan, but I know Demezy coming out of high school, there was thoughts about his shot looks weird. People thought he took a little too many shots, didn't drive to the rim hard, didn't go through contact very well when driving baseline. There's a bunch of criticisms of Demezy. The one thing he did have is he tried hard, which we saw at IU, especially at the beginning of the year last year, when even though he wasn't playing defense, he was really hustling and trying his hardest on the court. And two, that when he gets hot, there's no other better shooter than him. We didn't get to really see that at IU because he didn't get to take a bunch of shots, right? He didn't get to get hot. He didn't get to, take the shots, try to get him in rhythm. He just had to come off the bench for 3 or 4 minutes for a 3 or 4 minute stretch here or there. And that's not really going to work for him. The thing with Anthony Leal is that everybody thinks he's a pure shooter. Like, you could put the guy in the worst possible situation, he's going to try to find a way to make the shot. He's a gamer, right? And he's a winner too. I think people will talk about that too. But that Bloomington South team was undefeated. I think they were 28-0 going into I don't remember what form of the playoff they were in. Excuse me, Indiana basketball, high school basketball fans. But I think they were sectional playoffs or whatever they were in. They won their sectional and they were going to states, whatever. And Anthony Leal was the headliner of that team, hit a bunch of clutch shots, hit a game-winning three-pointer, won Mr. Basketball. And there's a little bit of a difference between the two, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I mean, at the end of the day, though, you're talking about a couple players that are, probably an inch or two in difference in height, a few pounds difference here or there in weight. I'm curious to see how the playing time works itself out. I mean, look, Matt, as you look back on Demezy Anderson at IU, did you have a favorite memory of his in the 2 seasons that he played for the Hoosiers? Is there anything that stands out to you?
I'm trying to think. No, I think he was a pretty good bench guy. A lot of his reactions on the bench whenever something great was going on were great, and he looked like he enjoyed being there, right? I don't think whenever we were doing well, I don't think there was a camera shot of him sitting over there sulking that we were winning the game. He was always invested in the game, always smiling, was a team player. And from what the teammates have said and stuck up for him on social media after he transferred, seemed like a well-liked guy in the locker room. So, there's nothing bad or great to point out, but that's just the little things, really.
You're so right. I mean, on the bench, he was a guy who was always engaged. He was always one of the first people up to high five the players coming off. I was just scrolling through his game by game from last year. He played 20 minutes against Florida State.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a key player for IU. at the start of the season, and it's crazy to think he didn't even score after the UConn game back in December. But as far as favorite memories, I I had to think about this for a little bit, no question. Mm-hmm. But I remember that crazy home game Indiana played against Nebraska that went, I think, a couple overtimes.
3, right?
And it may have been 3. I can't remember off the top of my head. It was a game Indiana won in large part thanks to Demezy Anderson coming in off the bench very late in the game and grabbing a bunch of key rebounds. And that's the one skill that he had that always stood out to me when I was watching Indiana in person. He was really good for his size as far as instincts and strength in rebounding the basketball, good hands as well. It just, you have to do more when you're a 6'6", 6'7" sort of wing player. Definitely curious to see how all things end up. But other than that, man, any other final thoughts on Demezy and his time at IU?
I mean, Demezy tried, right? Yeah. Like he worked hard, and nobody's gonna talk about that. He came in freshman interviews just talking about, I'm not ready to play yet, but like I'm ready to go. Like I want to get out there. I want to do this. Like I'm gonna put it all the effort I possibly can. It just didn't work out, and it's sad to see that. But we wish him the best of luck for Demezy in the future. All right, so moving on, back to Nathan again. Who won the week this week in IU sports, Nathan?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to get back into basketball here in a minute. But over the weekend, Indiana football, man, they continue to set the higher standard for the program. They keep raising the bar. And Simon Stepaniak, big name. We're gonna talk about Simon in a second here, or a little bit later in tonight's episode. But Indiana extended their streak to 7 straight years with a player selected in the NFL draft. And they had a streak of 16 or 17 straight years a couple decades ago, but really since then it's been very sporadic,
Yep.
A fun COVID-19 game, a fun quarantine game would be try to name Indiana players that were taken in the NFL draft, just keep going back and forth with your significant other sitting across the table. And see how it's an easy way to burn literally 5 minutes. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's how long it would take. The game would end rapidly. Okay. Yes. It's different when you talk about Ohio State or LSU or Alabama. Indiana football hasn't had that kind of success in the NFL draft. But Simon Stepaniak getting selected by Green Bay in the 6th round extends that streak to 7. And it was great to see Indiana football tweet out sort of an official recognition of that streak. It's something that they take pride in. If you walk around the tunnels around the IU football field inside the Memorial Stadium complex, there's a big wall that has a bunch of helmets on it that says, hey, we had players drafted to this team in this year. And that's been up for that wall's existed for quite a while. I mean, Indiana takes a lot of pride in this entire NFL draft process. And seeing Simon Stepaniak going to Green Bay, I'm not going to try to predict if he's got a shot at a roster spot, but it was fun to see him tweet out excitement and tweet out the NFL Network guys and the ESPN guys say his name and analyze his game. But good news for Simon Stepaniak and good news also for Indiana football.
Absolutely. By the way, that wall of the players' names is in between the weight room and the tunnel to the practice facility, and that's where it is. So if you're ever in the bowels of Memorial Stadium, that's where it is if you ever want to go find it. So there you go. All right, so moving on, more basketball news. Yay. Trayce Jackson-Davis will be returning next year. Trayce Jackson-Davis announced, I believe, Sunday afternoon, which the deadline for declaring for the NBA draft process was Sunday night. He declared Sunday afternoon in a video saying, I'm coming back, basically. So Trayce Jackson-Davis will be back. And there's an open-ended question I'm supposed to have. How significant is this? It's significant. I mean, he's our best player. Was up for freshman of the year in the Big Ten. Is a preseason, probably all Big Ten player next year, top 20 lists all around the country. He's going to average 13 and 10 next year, maybe even more, right? Like he is going to be our superstar on the basketball court for this team. He was the star this year and nothing's changing next year. He's still going to be the star, folks. So Nathan, what excites you most about Trayce Jackson-Davis coming back?
Yeah, I feel
Other
like
than
I should
him
have like,
returning.
yeah, I should have like balloons and streamers.
Yeah.
You know, if you're in Bloomington on Sunday, you should have. You know, I bet Archie Miller had a big party at his house with his wife and kids when Trayce Jackson-Davis sent out that official confirmation that
Yep.
that TJD's returning next year. Yeah, I mean, you're talking about a guy who averaged 13-8 last season, and in fact, I don't know what the numbers say exactly, and I have it here. He saw a slight drop in his numbers once he got into conference play, but let's face it. I mean, as a big going through the Big Ten grind last year, where you're facing Kofi Coburn and Xavier Tillman and Luca Garza, and I'm just scratching the surface. There's just three guys I'm mentioning off the top of my head. Trayce Jackson-Davis more than held his own, and look, honestly, I would not have blamed him if he threw his hat into the ring and said, "Hey, let me just see what the scouts have to say." There's
really
no penalty
surprised.
to that.
I was really surprised that he didn't, Nathan, because
There's
it's free. It's free. It's free advice.
That's right. And you know, we saw last year Justin Smith and Al Durham did it. I don't think they were expecting to be first round NBA draft picks, but I think they were also saying I don't even know if they'd be like first round IU basketball draft if you take all sort of the Hoosiers in the last 20 years or whatever. But we'll set that aside. It would have been easy for Trayce Jackson-Davis to throw his hat into the ring and say, "Look, I'm just curious. What are NBA scouts saying about me? What are NBA teams saying about me? And look, I'll probably come back." And you could come back as late as June 3rd, I believe, if you submit your name and declare for the draft process while maintaining eligibility. But TJD said no. TJD said, I'm coming back to Indiana. We've got work to do. I think unfinished business was the quote he used in the tweet that he sent out.
Yep.
I mean, he's very clearly committed to getting IU basketball into the NCAA tournament next year, into the top tier of Big Ten teams, which is not an overly ambitious goal for next year, by the way.
No.
Especially, and my favorite part about the tweet he sent out on Saturday or on Sunday was that the most popular reply to that tweet was by Christian Lander and a bunch of those eyes emojis that say, "Oh, interesting to you, interesting, Tracy, how you coming back?" If Christian Lander reclassifies to 2020, and all signs are pointing to that's what he's doing, especially when he's got those eyes emojis replying to.
And I don't think he has to take the SAT now either, thanks to coronavirus. Yeah,
there you go. Yeah, it's just a loophole.
Yeah,
it's a little thing, but it could be a big thing. I think that's something I bet Derrick Rose would have enjoyed a decade ago.
That's a deep cut into college basketball.
Yeah, if y'all don't know, just Google it. I'm a Bulls fan too. I don't know. I love D Rose, but facts are facts.
Fair.
But with Christian Lander, I mean, and Trayce Jackson-Davis, I'm really excited to see what's going to happen next year. What were your initial thoughts, Matt, when you saw TJD returning and looking ahead to next year? More than just points and rebounds, what are you expecting out of him?
I mean, obviously leadership, right? I mean, he's a sophomore, was the focal point of the team this last year, though at some points we might have felt like he was maybe less of a focal point than we all wanted him to be at times when he wasn't receiving the ball. But no, I mean, he's got experience. He has played at the highest level that he's played, that these players have played at now, and has proven himself against what was a loaded Big Ten. And I honestly think we'll look back after the NBA draft process goes through and look on holy crap, look at the players Trayce Jackson-Davis had to play against for a freshman, right? And he's one of Oturu is probably like the fourth best player on that list, and he's going to be like 16th in this NBA draft, right? Like, so these are the people he's trying to, not Bruno Fernando, but Jalen Smith from Maryland, right, is on that list as well. Somebody that I really like and is going to be doing very well for himself in the NBA draft this year. You go down the list. You have a bunch of people who he went against. We're like, wow, these guys are juniors, seniors, or sophomores who are just world class forwards that he's playing as. So leadership, and then in practice, he's going to be a guy that everybody's going to want to go up against, right? You're going to have, he's going to be making Race Thompson better when he goes against him in practice. He's going to be making Joey Brunk better when they're practicing together off the court and then, playing together in practice. This is something that Trayce is going to bring to the team. So I think all is well in the IU basketball universe right now.
Is there something more you would like to see from him next year? Like, if you could focus on one improvement he can make, is there something that you'd have your eyes on as far as that goes?
Yeah. The only thing I would possibly improve was his free throw shooting. I think if you improve the free throw shooting, I think he'll gain confidence in the ability to shoot. I don't think it's out of the question that he could shoot a couple mid-range shots and maybe work on that as well. But I just think shooting in general just goes and improving his mechanics on his free throw shot to make them more reliable. He's going to be a guy that can be able to put it on the floor. So you don't really need to stretch the floor. If the guy's off, giving him space, he's going to be able to take that space and work with it. It's not something I'm very worried about at all.
Yeah, no, and you talked about something there. You're right. The free throw shooting can get better. He was at 68% last year. You can imagine for somebody who gets the line as much as he does, and he was averaging 5-6 free throws a game last year. If you can bump up that percentage even a little bit, it can inflate that points per game number. For me though, it's the jump shot, and you touched on it there a little bit. It was hilarious. Every home game, at least, that I attended, one of the more interesting sort of exercises pregame was seeing Trayce Jackson-Davis knock down jump shot after jump shot after jump shot after jump shot half an hour before tip. And you're going, couldn't he try to shoot more? I mean, what would be the worst thing that could happen? Of course, he's incredibly effective, once you get inside 10 feet from the basket, but when you're trying to connect the dots from Trayce Jackson-Davis to NBA success, I mean, there's no question that every guy, whether you're 6 foot or 7'3", 7'4", everyone's got a jump shot nowadays. And I think that's something I'm looking forward to seeing next year out of TJD. Can he knock down that 15-foot jumper? Heck, can he knock down a corner three?
That's what I was going to say, because I was going to say, in the Michigan State game, he had a three-pointer. His foot was on the line, though, I'm pretty sure. And it was a late shot clock. He kind of just put it up, but it went in, right? I hope for his NBA future, though, and I don't think it's going to be stressed enough when we talk about IU guys and how they can make an NBA and what they're going to get here from the next level is, can he hit a corner three? Like, if he hits 1 or 2 next year, he is a for sure first round pick.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And TJD is somebody who, 5-star recruit, right? In Indiana, Mr. Basketball. I think next year you're going to see even more development out of him. But with that said, Matt, we've covered basketball pretty well. As far as your social media shout out, I always like the segment. Who are you giving a shout out to tonight?
All right, so my shout out's a little different this week. I'm going to be shouting out a recruit, but I think you'll realize why I'm doing this after I say his name, and that is Trayce Jackson. If that last name sounds familiar, but we were just talking about, he is the younger brother of Trayce Jackson-Davis. He's a highly touted quarterback out of Center Grove High School. He is in the class of 2022. And he's also a point guard in basketball, if you're interested in that as well. Archie might have to take a look at him as well. But he received the offer on the 26th, so that was Sunday night. He also received, or Sunday afternoon, sorry, he received an offer from IU. So a lot of IU love from the Jackson family on Sunday. But yeah, like he projects to be somebody at the next level that is going to be a really, really, really nifty dual threat quarterback. We saw a bunch of dual threat quarterbacks taking an NFL draft on Friday or Saturday. It's one of our teams decided to waste a second round draft pick on one. Anyways, we're not going to talk about that because I don't want to talk about the Eagles right now. But Trayce Jackson, if you would like to follow him or check out the post on social media, it's Trayce Jackson with another N. So Trayce Jackson N2. and that's Trayvon Jackson N2, or Taven Jackson. Sorry, not Trayvon. Taven Jackson, with Tayven Jackson N2 on Twitter. So go check him out.
Yeah,
Trayvon.
Yeah,
Trayvon. I merged
Trayce
and Taven together and made Trayvon. That's how that works.
That's exactly right. And I'm sure there's some sort of Jackson or Jackson-Davis out there in their family that has the name Trayvon. But look, he's a dual threat quarterback, like he said. Indiana got in early with his recruitment, and when you're not one of the Ohio States or the Penn States or the Notre Dames of the world, where you can just knock on someone's door and get an offer or get even a verbal commitment. In order to get some of these blue chip type players in the state, and I don't know if that's where Taven Jackson will end up being, but in order for that to work, you got to slide in as early as possible. And even though he's a 2022 player, Tom Allen was sort of the first high major coach to give him a D1 offer. So curious to see how that works out. Now, as we transition the NFL draft here, do I need to dig in a little bit more here? Like Taven Jackson, 6'5", 185, reminds me of a little sort of a skinny Jalen Hurts. Do I need to? Do you need to go on for that for a second here?
No. We'll be fine. I mean, if we do, we can just talk about the Bears tight end situation if you would like. But
hey.
Yeah, that's what I thought there, sir. Anyways, moving on to the NFL draft, we were just talking about and bantering about. So the only draft pick this year from Indiana University was Simon Stepaniak. As mentioned before, he was drafted to Green Bay in the 6th round, much to Aaron Rodgers' chagrin about not getting a wide receiver, though that could be also pointed to the fact that they took Love in the 1st round, a quarterback out of Utah State, with their 1st round pick. I think he'll be more mad about that than an offensive lineman that's pretty NFL ready in Simon Stepaniak. Other notable Hoosiers to get signed was Nick Westbrook, a senior receiver. Nick Westbrook got signed to the Tennessee Titans. And then Logan Justice, Raekwon Jones, and Donovan Hale are all still looking for free agent contracts to sign with the team, though I'm sure all 3 of them will end up somewhere on our practice squad or at least making camp somewhere for those 3.
Yeah, totally. And it was a big day for Indiana football back on Saturday. It's crazy, right? They won 8 games during the regular season, and pretty much competitive start to finish, no matter who they played, except for Ohio State, I guess. Indiana didn't have anyone really mentioned in as far as NFL draft mocks go, and there was just nobody. And Noah and I talked about that last week. It was just, you look up and down, and you're like, maybe Simon Stepaniak, and fortunately enough for Indiana, it was. That's a definitive yes. It's a big deal for IU football to continue to be able to persuade players to come and play in Bloomington. Because, hey, not only did we win 8 games, but look, we continue to get guys taken at the highest level. Very good weekend for IU football. I'm curious, and frankly, I agree with what you were saying. I think Logan Justice will find his way onto a practice squad at some point. He's a Bears fan who's had to watch a lot of crap kickers over the years. I can tell you that I don't care if you can make a 60-yarder. I don't care much for that. If you can, that's great. But I can also perfectly be content with signing somebody who can consistently knock something down from 40, 50 yards out. And that's what we saw Logan Justice do last year. This game felt like 10 years ago, but the season opener against Ball State at Lucas Oil last year was his game. I mean, look, you can call it the Logan Justice game for all I care. His left foot connecting from 40 plus, if not even 50 plus, helped IU win that one. So I know maybe the end of the season wasn't as great as people would have liked it. By the way, you also mentioned Donovan Hale, and he's somebody who hasn't really been talked about much. He missed the last couple of games at the end of the season last year. I don't know how the undrafted free agency scouting process works, but if that guy knocked on my door and said, "Hey, I'm a Big Ten receiver who whose dream is to play in the NFL. And then I looked up at him, and he's a 6'5", 6'6" guy. He's built. I'm like, why not give this dude a shot?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's somebody I remember him catching some jump ball touchdowns, I believe, against Michigan State last year, against Maryland. That guy, especially when you watch him on the practice field, he looks like the most NFL-ready receiver in the Big Ten as far as size and strength goes. So,
him and Donovan Peoples-Jones are the two guys that I watched just jumped out right off the page.
I know. So you were talking about a team like the Packers not drafting a receiver. I bet Aaron Rodgers could turn Donovan Hale into a pretty solid NFL wideout, especially when you give somebody that size and strength profile. But as you look more, just sort of generally about the NFL draft, is there anything else that really stood out to you as far as IU football or even the draft in general?
I mean, I think it was great to have like a live sports event. I mean, I was deprived at this point. I remember I was just talking about daydreaming about being an NBA agent. And now we're here talking about the only thing that has happened in like the last month since coronavirus broke out. So yeah, it was nice to have a draft. And I was telling my dad earlier, my dad was like, did you watch the draft this week? I was like, yeah, I watched the first 3 rounds, then, kept updated on my phone, on Twitter, the third day. He was like, oh, like people actually watch the draft? And I was like, yeah, it's a big event. Like people love the draft. He's like, I don't understand why. And I was like, well, one, because you get to watch your favorite school's players get drafted, but also 2, I mean, it's fun thing to laugh at other teams, right? It's fun to joke about Jordan Love going to the Packers. It's fun to talk about Jalen Hurts being drafted in the 2nd round by the Eagles. This is fun. And then it's also fun to watch your favorite team and kind of, I want CeeDee Lamb to go to the Eagles in the 1st round, right? I'm waiting for him to fall to the Eagles, and then the Dallas Cowboys take him, and I'm screaming at my TV. It's fun. It's a fun experience. So I'm glad we had fun with sports this weekend, and hopefully as things seem to be getting better around here and things get back more to normal, sort of, however long it's going to take that sports comes back and we're able to watch baseball. At this point, I watch a 9-inning baseball game. I'd chop your hand off for it at this point. So anything else you got left to add there, Nathan?
Yeah, no, I think that's hilarious. I've heard some stuff about maybe some double headers, at least way more double headers if baseball.
I'll take it at this point.
I think it was funny. You were saying you were watching the first three rounds or whatever. I'm pretty sure I watched about a solid 90% of the whole thing over the weekend. Yeah. Especially once he got into Saturday, where the picks were just pretty much rolling through. Especially looking at the possibility of an Indiana player getting drafted. That was like, what else am I gonna do? As a sports fan at least. So that's one thing. The one final thing I wanted to say is there may not have been any sort of high level prospects for IU in the 2020 draft, but looking ahead to next year, you're gonna hear some names called out of Indiana football, starting with possibly the quarterback. I mean, Michael Penix is technically draft eligible next year, even though he would be, I believe, a redshirt junior next season. After this fall, Michael Penix can throw his hat into the ring and say, "Somebody take me." And if he does, assuming he makes even a slight improvement from what he showed last year, and the injury problems, don't affect him, I would not be surprised if he was taken pretty high up in the draft next summer. But that's Penix, and he would be an early entrant into the draft anyway. The 2 guys that I'm curious about as far as next year in the draft are Whop Phillier and Ty Freifogel. 2 guys, wide receivers, obviously, and Indiana's had a lot of success as far as NFL draft prospects go at the wide receiver position, thinking about Tandon Doss and Cody Latimer, and then in the NFL, Antoine Randall was obviously a very prominent wide receiver.
He was pretty good with some random team that Noah might like.
We talked about him last week for sure. Indiana's trying to get their first round pick in the NFL draft in a long time. And I don't know if Whop Phillier or Michael Penix would be that if they throw their hat into the ring, but it'll definitely be fun to watch. So Whop Phillier is already being discussed around NFL draft scouting land as a guy who with another season like last year, he's going to go pretty high up. But yeah, great weekend for IU football. Stepaniak gets drafted, Westbrook signs to Tennessee, and then you've just got more to look forward to next year.
Yeah, and I really hope those guys we talked about, right, the Raekwon Jones, Logan Justice, and Donovan Hale of the world, find a place, because I there's nothing better than watching our Hoosiers move on and try to fulfill their dream of chasing a championship and playing in the NFL. So that is about going to wrap it up for our 139th show of the Hoosier Sound. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your support. Big shout out to the live audience. You guys are all beautiful people. We love you so much, and thank you for being here. And we hope to see you next week and next Tuesday. To hear more of our fantastic shows like this one, head on over to at the Hoosier Sound on Twitter, at IndianHQ, and follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. If you like the show, please leave us a review, tell a friend, share our links. Your support really, really helps us grow this podcast and reach more passionate IU fans such as yourself. But as always, thank you for listening, Hoosier Nation, and we'll see you next time. Peace.
See ya.